Well, hello, retro game players. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Marcus, and today I've got a very special list for you. It's the top 10 PS4 shoot-em-ups with a physical release. So go ahead and pop in a Pop-Tart, grab yourself a Jolt Cola, and let's get ready to rumble. Alright, so before we begin, I'm going to just tell you that every single game on this list is very good, alright? So just because it's numbered 10 through 1, I'm telling you guys right now, they are all really good. Every single game on here I had so much fun playing, so it's going to depend on what kind of style of shmup you like. If you want them to be frantic or, bullet hell or more strategic, it just depends. But they're all really good, and I'm going to do my best to explain each dynamic of each one. So first up, coming in at 10, is Super Hydorah. Now, this game was originally released in 2010, and it was for free. And the developers behind it are the guys behind Curse Castilla, which was a kind of an independent release through East Asia Soft, which is Play Asia, basically. This one somehow ended up at limited run. I'm not sure how that ended up happening, considering they were with East Asia Soft, but regardless, this game is very similar to Gradius, and I would say like Life Force. It's really brutal. It's got real basic controls. You basically have a main weapon. You go around, you get power-ups. What I would suggest is getting a shield right off the bat. That's one of the power-ups you can get, and that makes life so much easier, because otherwise it's one-hit deaths. If you get that shield, it makes it so much easier. The thing I like about this game is the music, the graphics, the side-scrolling gameplay is so classic. It's like they really did a good job with just attacking that genre of the classic old school shoot 'em up. So if you're into this kind of stuff, I highly recommend it. The only thing that I'll tell you is, out of every game on this list, this is the one that I would say frustrated me the most, because it is tough. But what can I say? Like, that's just sort of how those old games were, It's just going to challenge you. So that's the good news and bad. But yeah, it's really fun. Super Hydorah. I know you guys will like this one. So check it out. Let's move up to number 9. Number 9. Okay, so the number 9 game is a game that I actually did play on the channel. It's originally an arcade game, and they made a Sega Saturn port from 1995. So it's extremely wacky. Maybe you know what it is. The Game Paradise. So the Game Paradise is a crazy shoot 'em up. This is the physical release from Japan. It did come with the game, but also a very strange DVD, which I have not popped in to check out what that is. But it's still really cool. Now, the game itself has you basically flying through arcades and video games themselves, which is really the charm. The music is really good as well, but it's totally got that like 90s shoot 'em up style. It's frantic. It's definitely got the kind of wacky Japan thing going on too, but it's fun. It's definitely addicting to play. I'm gonna link the actual arcade game that I played through, so you can check that out if you want to see a lot of it. But all in all, it's really a good game for the PS4. And they really added a lot of content in here as well. So I'd say it'd keep you busy for quite a long time. And it's definitely cool to go through and see all the different video game environments. They even have like Atari 2600 games that you're flying through, and then like more like, arcade, like Sega style games. And anyway, it's a blast. So the Game Paradise is definitely one that I would pick up if you're into sort of the old school Japanese style shooters, which do get really frantic. But like I said, good graphics, good music, and a really interesting environment to play in. So that's number 9. Let's move up to number 8.
Number 8.
So the 8th game on this list was sent to me by Strictly Limited Games. These guys are awesome. Special shout out to Dennis. And they hooked me up with Guns, Gore, and Cannoli, which was a game I played through. And then actually another one on a platformer list that I'm working on right now too. But anyway, they're a great publisher. The way that they release games gives you plenty of time to get the title when it comes out. And they are, limited numbers, but they're easy to get. So this one in particular is a shoot 'em up, and it's called Gryphon Knight Epic. Now, this game has you playing as this little knight on a griffin, so it's got this medieval style vibe. The graphics remind me sort of like a cartoony style shoot 'em up. And it's funny because it's really weird. There's one game in particular in Sega Genesis that for some reason just reminds me of the graphic style, and it's Pigskin Football. I know that's super random, but that's just what it reminds me of. But it's kind of cartoony. It does get tough as you go, so it starts out pretty easy, it's not too hard, and as you beat each boss you get a new weapon, so very similar to Mega Man. And that helps too, because you can basically start to toggle between your different weapons. That's really useful. You can also turn the direction of the Gryphon. You can go left to right, and that's useful for some enemies. And then also there's branching pathways, so you'll be flying along and all of a sudden it'll say, do you want to go up or to the right or whatever. And there's secret areas, so you kind of want to explore each level. One thing I liked about this game too is that every level looks different. Like the graphics have a unique style, the enemies are all very diverse, so it doesn't really get boring. And then on the main map screen, you can choose between which areas you want to go back through or go and attempt. There's definitely different shops, so you can go and get item shops or buy stuff there and power up your weapons, so that's useful. And then there's 3 different difficulty levels, so depending on how crazy you want to get, you can increase the difficulty. The only thing I would say that's interesting is that if it is on easy, there's little power-ups that heal you, and those show up more. But if you start playing on normal or hard, it gets harder to find those, so you'll have to be a little bit more careful. Also, the hitbox for the Gryphon Knight and the character, is just the knight itself. So the Gryphon you don't have to worry about, but the knight you do. And then finally, the music is very cool. It's like orchestrated, very medieval, has some really catchy themes, which I was kind of surprised, but kind of reminded me of like Conan or something. So yeah, anyway, this game was really fun. I was really impressed with it, and that's why it's on this list. So there you go, that's number 8. Let's move up to number 7. Number 7. Alright, so this next game is a game by HughCast, and these guys made a bunch of games like Ducks and Redux, and this is one that is actually available on Dreamcast in a physical release. It's one of the new sort of Dreamcast games that came out, and it's really great on the Dreamcast, and it's also really good here on the PS4. It's been released on a bunch of other systems too, and digitally, so Steam, for example. Anyway, I'm talking about Ghostblade, and this is HD. So this game is, I would say, a really intense bullet hell style shooter. The only thing, and the only reason it's kind of far down on this list, is that there's so much stuff going on in the graphics, but it's not necessarily bullets. Like, there's huge stars that are flying around that sort of help you, but then there's also, every time you explode a ship, there's pieces of fragments that fly all over the screen, and it's kind of just crazy. It's definitely intense. You'll get into the zone and you'll start doing pretty good, but just so you know, that's like visually what's going on. It's constant. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot of like dynamics to the gameplay. You basically have 2 modes of fire. You can just have your guns sort of just do whatever they do, like spread out, or you can focus them in, and that helps take down bosses quicker. Then you have like a bomb, but similar to another game on this list, you almost want to save your bombs unless you're, taking out a boss at the very end and there's only a little bit of life left. And the reason is because the bombs act as like hit protection for you. So if you get hit, one of your bombs is depleted, and it also goes off. So I personally feel like if I'm trying to make it through this game, I just don't use my bombs unless I'm, you know, at a boss and it's like the boss is almost dead, or I'm about to die, like, and lose my last guy, because then I'll just use up my bombs. But it's a fun game, definitely very pretty. Like, it's a very pretty, beautiful game. I mean, you know, it's very intense. That's the way I would mostly describe it. If you go to the options on this, you can turn the explosions to be sort of darker, and that to me makes it easier to tell what's going on. So that's one of the first things that I did, is go in and just turn the explosions down to this darker contrast, and it just makes everything pop out a little bit better. So this game is classic. HuCast is an awesome company. They do really cool games like that are shooters. So, you know, if you don't have a PS4 and you're watching this, I don't know, you know, check out the Dreamcast version if you have a Dreamcast, because that is another version, and that's still available. That you can get that at Play Asia, for example. So anyway, it's a good shooter. It's just sort of simple. The bosses are kind of basic. The other thing I'll tell you too is, like, the enemies just sort of go on this certain path, and when they come at the top of the screen, they'll just unleash this huge amount of bullets. And the way that it works is their bullets are kind of coming at a certain speed, but if you just stay right in front of them and shoot them and they explode, then all of their bullets actually turn to the stars. And so then you won't get hurt, and you'll actually attract all these stars. That's also something that just sort of isn't that attractive to me, is that the stars are so big. It's like these giant gold stars, and all I can think of is like a sheriff's badge for some reason. So it's just kind of extreme for me, but you know, it's still a fun game. The soundtrack is really good. So there you go. That's Ghostblade HD. Let's move up to number 6. Number 6. Alright, so the number 6 game is actually a remaster of a 1996 arcade game that was actually ported to the Sega Saturn in 1998. I'm talking about Battle Garegga. Now, this is a very cool warfighter plane-based shoot-'em-up, and this version is one that I picked up from Play Asia. It's the Korean physical release. It has a soundtrack, which is kind of cool, but this game has all these different modes. It's got a mode called Perfect Edition, it's got Super Easy mode, and then it's got the arcade, and then it's got Sega Saturn, and then it's got soundtracks that are different. You can also change things like the screen layout, which is pretty cool, but you can rotate your screen. In case you have a TV that you can flip vertically, this game will let you do that. Then when you get started, you basically play of one of 4 different ships. The graphics are very sort of realistic. Not a lot of like crazy bright colors here. It's more like, reminds me of like a Neo Geo arcade game, you know, from the 90s. And it's just real gritty. The soundtrack's awesome. And it's just got like a really intense vibe going, you know. Similar to Ghostblade, you have these bombs, but it's really better if you're playing on the you know, harder modes to save those bombs, because they act as a shield, just like Ghostblade. So when you get hit, your bomb goes off. If you use all your bombs, then that's an instant kill for you. So I prefer to just hold on to those. You also get like these additional ships that act as like firing points, and you can hit a button and you can change them into different configurations. You know, when you get one, it's kind of cool, but pretty soon you'll end up with 4, and you can have them rotate, flying around. You can have them do all kinds of stuff. And I can't remember if it's 5 ships that you eventually get, but at some point they fly out and they actually get right up into an enemy, and they just like attack the enemy for you. It's awesome. But yeah, each plane has different, you know, attributes, basically, the way it fires. And anyway, it's a fun game. I really enjoy this one. And, you know, it's tough to beat if you're playing on the normal modes, but, you know, hey, if you want to like run through the game, put it on super easy mode and just kick back, and yeah, you'll get through it no problem. But it's really fun. Think of it as like free play mode almost, you know. But yeah, Battle Garegga, definitely a high intensity shoot 'em up. It's not really, it's weird, it's like, it's just not a typical bullet hell where it's like just crazy colorful. It's just more muted tones, you know. but it's fun. So there you go. If you like combat, like military stuff, you're gonna love this game. Now, before we move up to number 5, we've got a word from our sponsor.
In the two-dimensional world of video dots and dashes, flat blips and formless blobs, one video arcade game soars a dimension above the rest. Zaxxon! Experience the control as you climb and dive. Feel the power as you attack and evade. Discover a new level of excitement with the true feel of action in 3 dimensions. Zaxxon, from the master design engineers of Sega.
All right, those were 5 awesome games. We've got 5 more. And right off the bat, this game is a classic series. I mean, this is one that really defined a lot of the, vertical style shooters. And yeah, it's definitely got its roots in that genre. So I'm talking about Raiden, and this is Raiden 5. This is the director's cut. Now, this is something that actually comes with a soundtrack, which is pretty nice. But I'll tell you what, the reason this game is not higher, all right, I'm just going to tell you the bad right off the bat, is that it literally, if you don't go into the options and turn off the voices, I mean, for me, it was driving me insane. It's like constant talking. Like, while you're playing, it's literally like up in the upper right of the screen, these characters and the storyline is just constantly talking. I mean, they don't stop, man. It's insane. So the first thing I would recommend is going and turning that way down, all right? That's really a big thing for me, just because it's like, come on, like, what the hell? Like, it's like, let me just play the game. I don't need, like, this constant narration, you know? With that said, Raiden is awesome. You know, when you select your ship, different ships give you different firing attributes. You can actually get some crazy combos going on, which is really cool. You can really pick and choose what your ship looks like, or sorry, the way it shoots. And then as you're playing the level, depending on what you choose to upgrade, because basically there's 3 kind of floating power-ups, and they alternate between 3 different colors. And whichever one you grab, it powers up that weapon, you know? And if you want to switch to another weapon, you actually have to wait for the next power-up to come. It'll change color, and then you get it, and it'll make it, switch to that weapon. Which is really fun to toggle around, but if you're trying to get the best weapon, you really should figure out which one you like and then power that up first. But yeah, it's definitely intense. The graphics are really good. This game is polished. There's certain things about it. It's got a real narrow field of view. There's a lot of stuff on the right and left side of the screens, but that's okay. It's a vertical shooter. This game is classic. The soundtrack is definitely good. If you like the Raiden series, this one actually feels a little more forgiving than some of the other ones in the past. Like for example, this one, you don't die right away when you get hit. You actually can absorb some shots before you die. So, Raiden back in the day was really tough, and this one is hard, but you'll make it through. You'll progress, and it's got a very stylish, polished look to it. So, there you go. That's Raiden 5, coming in at 5, and let's move up to number 4. Alright, the 4th game on this list is one that is extremely visually impressive. And, for some people, this could be a number 1. I honestly, as I was playing these and ranking these, this one ended up moving up. Because at first, I wasn't really into sort of the Japanese dialogue and the characters. And I don't know, it just isn't my thing. But then you start playing and it's like, wow, this game is really cool, and it's just beautiful. This is one of the better looking games in this entire list, and it's Caladrius Blaze. This is the version I got from Play Asia, which is actually really cool. It's got an art book and then a manual, a really nice manual too. But in this game, you can pick from a bunch of different characters. They all have different ships. and each one is just visually spectacular. Like, they are really cool to look at. And then as you're playing, you have these different weapons that you can use on each button, right? So if you're playing, you can hit triangle and that does one weapon. You can hit circle, that does one weapon, and those will run out. They actually have a percentage, and so you can use the weapon and then it kind of recharges, right? And then at the end of a level, you can put one power-up point. I think sometimes you get two, but you can put a power-up point in one of those slots and it becomes stronger. So if you're trying to balance out your craft, you could distribute them, but it is also really easy to just power up one of those. And some of them are really like effective. Like some of them are like a shield mixed with firing, and so you can actually block a lot of shots. This game is, I mean, seriously, like, the levels are gorgeous. The graphics are gorgeous. And the soundtrack is extremely good, too. All in all, the polish on this thing is incredible. So, if you haven't played this and you like shooters, this is one that I know you'll like. I highly, highly recommend it. So, there you go. That's number 4. We've only got 3 games left. And, yeah, what can they be? Let's check them out. Alright, so the number 3 game is one that really impressed me. I honestly was not expecting this to be so fun after I pushed myself to get through some of the earlier levels, even though the earlier levels are amazing. What's cool about this game is it has these gameplay elements that are totally unique. Alright, so here it is, number 3, Sine Mora. And what's cool about this game is that one thing that's really different, all right, is that you have a constant timer that's constantly ticking down. And as you shoot ships, the timer goes up, right? If you don't shoot ships or you get hit, then the timer drops. And if it goes to 0, you die. That's your health bar. The timer is your health bar, right? So the more you get hit, the quicker that thing starts to plummet, and next thing you know, you're dead. Also, as you go, you'll get power-ups for your weapon, which are awesome. You'll get some really cool power-ups. And as you power up, there are these little red, power-ups, and when you get hit, they all sort of fly forward, and you have to collect them all to get your weapon back, And it's sort of a risk, because if you go for them and you get hit again, that just hurts that timer. So what's weird, though, is the first time I played this, I didn't like the timer idea. I thought it was really annoying. And then after a while, and I started just ignoring it, I did a lot better. I just zoned out, started to focus on the game itself. Another thing that happens is you'll actually get to a checkpoint where the timer resets. And that's a huge plus as well. And it is like a checkpoint. The bosses are so cool. The graphics are so cool. This is very steampunk. Like, if there was a shooter that you try to think of that's like fully embodying like the steampunk movement or art style, this is it. I mean, the bosses are like straight out of steampunk, and they're huge. They're really huge. They are bigger than most shooters when you're playing. Like, they have multi-levels. You'll fly up, and down and go under them and come around. And I mean, this game is so polished. I think it's THQ Nordic. Yeah, THQ Nordic did this. It is insanely good. So yeah, this is the number 3 for a reason. And yeah, the other thing is that when you play, you can go like story mode, or you can do a boss battle, which is really cool. And when you do boss battle, you can just go and practice on some of the bosses that you've already beat, or one that you've unlocked that you're stuck on. So you can actually practice a boss that you're stuck on, then go back and try and beat him, which is a very cool way to practice, And yeah, the game was really impressive. There's also a lot of characters to unlock. Each one has different features. One of the best features in this too, which was one that I had a hard time like not using, was the slowdown. So if you hit R2, you can do one of your special moves that each character has. And basically the one that slows down time is the one that I felt was the most useful. But there are other ones like shield and that kind of thing. The only problem is once you use it all, it's gone, But for some of the insane like bullet hell sequences, like the slowdown is what saved me from, you know, like dying basically, because I could use it and then, you know, navigate around all the bullets. And that's the other thing I'm going to say about this game. This game, the bullets look so cool. Like, it reminds me of like a fireworks display. Like, it's just so colorful, and I don't know why, but the colors are just like, I'm drawn to the colors. Like, I just want to play this game more and more. With that said though, when I was capturing footage for this, I actually got stuck and I was like getting really pissed off. Like, so it can get really tough. But again, the focus should not be on the timer. Just focus on the games, taking out enemies and avoiding getting hit. That's your focus. Forget about the timer, and I think you'll hit the checkpoints and you'll progress through it. So there you go. That's number 3. Let's move up to number 2. All right, so this number 2 game is one that I almost put at number 1. All right, I was so blown away by this game, and it's been released on tons of systems, like tons and tons of systems. There's multiple versions, there's mobile versions. It's insane. But this is Skyforce, the Anniversary Edition. I streamed this for 3 hours, okay? And I was progressing and unlocking things for my ship the whole time. There's not a lot of shooters that you can say that have that sort of gameplay formula to keep you playing. And I'll just tell you this, when I first started this and I was playing level 1 and the, you know, entry level ship, I was like, this game is really tough, because as I was playing level 1, I kept dying. I just kept dying, not doing very good at all. And what it is that you can unlock power-ups for your ship. You basically earn money. That's the key, right? So you earn money in the game, and those are these little stars. And as you upgrade your ship, it becomes easier. You upgrade health, you upgrade your weapons, you have missiles, you get bigger things like bombs and this laser, which are sort of a one-time use thing. I actually didn't really use those very often, but it is really cool. And the graphics, I'm just going to talk about those for a minute. They are beautiful. Like, it looks like you're actually flying overhead, and it's very strategic. The way that the game plays starts out real slow. Like, it's like this, it's not very frantic, but then on the later levels, it gets insane. But it's really like this sort of realistic looking sprite-based gameplay. And when you start a level, you need to unlock medals, all right? And so one way of doing that is by clearing 70% of enemy forces, right? And that's pretty easy to do. Another medal will be given to you for clearing 100% of enemy forces. And then another one is to rescue sort of the POWs all scattered around on the level. And that can be pretty tricky, but if you rescue them all, you get a medal. And the other one is to not get hit. So have 0 hits in the entire game, or in that level, and you'll get a medal. And if you do that, you get all 4 medals, it'll unlock a hard mode for that same level with 4 new challenges. And what's crazy is that like level 2 will not open up until you get a certain amount of medals, right? And normally that kind of gameplay sort of irritates me, but this was fun because as you're playing, every time you play, you earn more money, which then you can save up and buy and unlock power-ups for your ship. So, you know, by the time you're getting through it, your ship is just getting more and more badass. And, you know, there's one level 2, level 5. It's crazy. Like, it takes you a long time to figure out what to do. There's a submarine that shows up, hits you with these EMP blasts, and your weapon systems go down. And when that happens, you're just flying around dodging stuff. You don't have any weapons, so you have to dodge everything in that level. It took me a while, but in the stream, I actually got through that level. And then level 6 is what I was on. But I had so much fun with this game, and the music is awesome. It's like really retro, very cool, kind of has like a dance vibe to it. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It was really cool. It's like synthwave almost. So anyway, Skyforce Anniversary, highly recommend this one. I cannot tell you guys how close this came to being the #1 game, all right? So if you're looking for a game with lots of replayability, this is it. This is going to be one that's going to be fun to play for a long time. So Skyforce Anniversary, that's number 2. Let's move up to number 1. All right, the final game here is one that's a classic arcade shoot-'em-up series. It's one that's been ported to lots of systems, and the first one actually came out in the arcades by Taito, and it's, man, this is why it's number 1 to me, because I've always been a fan of this series. Okay, so Sega Saturn had some games. This one in particular is a remix of a 2010 arcade game called Dariusburst. And this is Dariusburst CS, or Chronicle Saviors. This version is extremely cool because they preserve the arcade game and then they give you like a console version, but I think it's more of like a campaign is what the CS is for. Either way, what it's like, all right, so the arcade game actually used 2 or maybe 3 arcade monitors side by side, and you had this incredible field of play. So the Darius universe has always been based off of sort of like mechanized, aqua-themed, levels and bosses. And the music has always been very unique as well, something that kind of stands out. Now, this is amazing because it's got the arcade game with that crazy long, stretched out formatting. Your TV will end up with some really crazy looking letterboxes up on the top and bottom in the arcade mode. In the campaign or the CS, whatever the CS is for, that's the Chronicle Saviors edition basically. So that is formatted to fit your screen and it's set up differently. So when you play the arcade mode, first thing you choose is whether or not you're gonna have free play on or off, meaning like if you're sitting there just popping in quarters, or if you're gonna play it and die, and then you choose easy, normal, or hard, and those are branching pathways, how you progress through each level. And there's gonna be bosses, tons of cool enemies. The gameplay, just so you guys know if you're not familiar with it, is that your ship, you can turn both ways. That's one thing that's cool. You can flip around. You want to go after 3 main power-ups. And each one kind of powers up different things. So one is going to be your shield, that's blue. Then you've got red for bombs, and then green is like your main attack, or maybe it's the other way around. But basically, those power up your weapon systems and then a shield. And then if you get like a gold one, I think that just clears all enemies. And silver is for points. But the idea is that you're powering up your systems and your levels on your ship, and it starts getting really powerful. You also have something that's basically your burst attack. And if you hit a button, it'll just extremely deplete, or it'll deplete this extreme attack straight out of the nose of your ship. And it's really powerful. You have another mode where you can actually drop it off in place and it'll just hover wherever you put it and it'll shoot straight for a while. It's not as powerful as your main burst, but it works really well. The bosses also have these burst attacks, and you can do these counter bursts, which sounds crazy, but you can drop off or actually get right up there and wait for the right moment, and then you can do an ultra powerful burst on the boss. So the arcade mode is really fun to play, all right? But the campaign version that's meant for the PS4 is formatted for the screen, and the way it's set up is it's almost like pulling stages, various stages from the arcade, and it added new stages too, but they're like in a row. So you basically play, 3 levels, then a boss, and then you go to the next stage or the next level, and you can progress through it that way. But the music of this game is so phenomenal. It is so crazy at times. It's like sometimes you'll be like, what am I listening to? It's absolutely insane. But the graphics are so tight, so polished. The gameplay is amazing. I mean, this game is like polished. I cannot tell you how high quality this one is. So if you're looking for something that if you've never played Darius games, this is a good one to get into just because it is so visually spectacular. I know you guys will like it, but if you're, just looking for something that, is gonna last a long time as far as replayability, this is one that will do that, because there's so many levels to explore, so many bosses to see, and different modes that you can play too. So this one deserves to be number one in my mind, just because of how great it looks. The music is amazing. It is fun to play. The bosses are extremely spectacular. And then it's got these two different modes that really contrast each other, you know? The only thing that I would say would be awesome is if, you know, you could set up like multiple TVs in a row and it would just stretch out all crazy huge. That would be really cool. I don't think the PS4 can do that, however. But anyway, that's the number one game, Dariusburst CS. I highly recommend this one. If you haven't played it, it is so fun. And I know it'll be an experience that you guys will enjoy. So that concludes this top 10. Thank you guys for watching. The next one, I believe, is going to be on the top 10 PS4 platformers with a physical release. And that one is one that I'm already working on. I'm really excited about that. So you guys know what to do, though, right? You keep that shit retro by playing the old shoot 'em ups on your PS4 later on.